Hello and welcome to Wi-Fi Friends, episode 10. I'm Cameron.
I'm
By John.
John. 10
Yes!
episodes
Look at that!
in,
We're in! It's episode 10!
baby.
Woohoo! For those who don't know, this is a podcast where me, a Welshman, talks to my friend John, an American, and we don't get a lot of time to talk because we're in different countries most of the time. So we talk over the internet and we chat about geeky stuff because that's kind of what we're into and what our friendship was built into. But we also talk about what we've been up to recently. So John, what have you been up to recently?
Well, if you've popped on over to the Wi-Fi Friends YouTube channel, I posted a couple of vlogs from the beach.
You did indeed.
Yes, it was a fun time. Me, my lovely wife, Christina, love of my life, and our adorable daughter went to the beach with some friends. They have a beach house on Dolphin Island, which is in Alabama.
That's an amazing name for a beach house.
Yeah, Dolphin Island. It's great. So we went to their beach house. We went to one beach one day and then a separate beach the other day because it's like an island. So there's
double beaching.
Exactly. The first beach was great.
Yes.
I've realized I'm very particular about my beaches. I didn't realize I was. The first beach was nice, fun. We got to walk through this like bird sanctuary.
Oh, wow.
It was like this bird watching area to get to the actual beach, which has all these kind of dunes and hills. So it's really cool. Got a great like vibe and aesthetic to it.
Nice.
And the water was great, and there was just plenty of room to where everyone was kind of spaced out. The second beach, people were like, "Oh, hey, you don't have to walk as far. You just park the car and you walk across the sand, and you're there."
Okay.
So I was like, "Okay, that's fine." It was smaller, less area, I think, to go around. The water wasn't. It looked like more of a fishing spot.
Okay.
There were a lot of
like
like
a hangout
rocks.
beach and more like a hey, let's go here to actually do some fishing and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of rocks and a lot of like rock formations for people to like go out to and cast lines and stuff. So
I see.
not my idea of a good time, but I enjoyed both, obviously. But the first beach, very excellent, very fun.
It looked very cool. For those who haven't seen the video, you're on the channel. You can just click over at any time. But I recommend.
It's not quality content.
Well, I'd recommend watching it as a 2-part series because it is one of the most self-deprecating jokes I've ever seen. That is so good. But I don't want to spoil it. But yeah.
I gotta throw shade at myself.
Yeah, you gotta. It's part of your brand,
Yeah.
Gotta stay on brand. I like beaches a lot, and I'm a very big fan of beaches. I have a video myself about a beach, but what I kind of like about beach is the water, more so than any other aspect. A lot of people, they make sandcastles and stuff. I kind of like that, but as a kid, I hated that. So I have like some good, when you hate something as a kid, but you don't understand why you hated it, but you still kind of got that feeling, like that snap reaction, and then you have to go, no, that doesn't make sense. I just hated that for no reason. So like I have that with sand sometimes. Maybe it was a Star Wars thing, but I think the part I was very jealous of is when you ran straight in the water. I was just like, oh man, I just love running into water and just like, it's different than being in a pool. Like pools are cool. I love swimming in a pool, and like fun themed pools like you get in Disney. But there's nothing better than just just running out into the waves of a beach. It's just so cool. It just feels like, I don't know. It feels like tranquil, I guess is the word you'd use.
Tranquilo.
Pardon?
Tranquilo.
Oh, a little
yeah,
bit.
I know.
A little exotic.
A little Espanol for you. But it's interesting. Not to go off topic because we never do that on this show. But recently, Tumblr has given me a new appreciation for the prequel movies.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I've just been seeing a lot of posts on Tumblr and stuff of like talking about certain aspects of the Star Wars prequels, and there's this one post talking about the sand line and how everyone makes fun of that line because it's dumb or whatever. But then they did like a giant Tumblr article about it, and I'm like, you know what? You turned me around on the line, Tumblr. You turned me around on all the prequels. Because I think a lot of us think about the prequels with a mindset of when they came out.
Okay.
And not in hindsight.
See, it's interesting you say that because I think that as a kid, I loved the prequels. They were like my
Yeah.
first Star Wars movies. My dad was a huge Star Wars fan, and when Episode 1 was coming out, he was like, "Oh my god, this is going to be amazing!" Because obviously, all the Star Wars fans thought that it was going to be, the second coming. They thought it was going to be amazing. So my dad took me to see the first one, having not seen any of the other Star Wars movies. He was like, "This is going to be amazing." We sat down and we watched it in the cinema, and I came out and I was like, "Dad, that's amazing! Star Wars is the best." And I just remember him being like, "No, that's not Star Wars."
Well, and I should say, the type of people I'm talking about are like the neckbeardy internet people, whatever, who were at an older age than us when we first saw them.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting because I kind of went with this weird, like, this wavy opinion for me where I loved them as a kid, and then I got to, like, teenage years where I started getting into comics and started getting into, like, more nerdy stuff and getting into, like kind of the culture aspect.
Yeah.
When you're a kid, you're not into nerdy culture. You just like things. There's not like this like communication, and there's not like this canon that you're supposed to understand. You just like things.
Yeah.
So then when I entered the kind of canon of what you are supposed to and not supposed to like, then I hated them for like maybe even like 7 to 10 years. And then I got to a stage where I was like, came out on the other side, and I was just like, no, you kind of just got to have your own opinions, and there's going to be things that you like that other people hate, and I think we're at a point with the internet now where, yes, there's still like this, if a movie is bad, it's generally considered bad, but I feel like there's a pockets of the internet where they'll always appreciate something you like. So if everyone hates something, you can always find other people that like the thing you like, even if everyone hates it. And since then, I've kind of had this neutral relationship with the prequels where I kind of... there are parts of them that frustrate me because I'm like, it could have been so much better. It could have handled this so much better. But ultimately, I've learned to like love the good bits and kind of like just either ignore or make fun of the bad bits, but it doesn't ruin it for me because there is so much good in the prequels that like it's almost like in the original Star Wars trilogy, there's loads and loads of good stuff. And there's not much bad. But in the prequels, I feel like there's loads and loads of good stuff, but there's also loads of bad stuff. But you shouldn't then ignore the good stuff just because of all the bad stuff. Like, it's kind of... It's weird because it's so easy to just default onto all the stuff you don't like in those movies.
Yeah.
When there's so many... I mean, like, I know I've probably mentioned this a million times. I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't on every single podcast, but Ewan McGregor's performance in all three of those movies is absolutely... It's great. It's fantastic. Yeah. It's amazing. And I've just got to a point now where I'm just like, if I got to choose, I may as well choose to like him because like, what's the point? What do you gain from?
And that's my thing. It's like I haven't rewatched those movies in so long.
Yeah,
I've not gone back and revisited them. So I'm like, it's like with any sort of canon, I just pick and choose what I like.
Yeah,
and that's what I stick with. And like I argue, like I mean, Hayden Christensen in the third movie has a presence.
Okay.
That is just him standing there. Not talking, but his presence, his on-screen presence.
Yeah.
I think it's tremendous. And I mean, I still like as a kid, for me, Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting in the lava was A, the coolest fight scene I'd ever seen in my life. And B, like, what is, no, like, he's turning bad. What is going on? Like, it was like one of those like really deep, impactful moments.
I had a really amazing experience last year when we were showing our friend from Portugal all the movies, and she'd never seen them before. Not only she'd never seen any Star Wars movies before, but she also didn't know the general plot. So she didn't know the I Am Your Father. She didn't know anything. So we got to watch them from episode 1 all the way through. And it was so amazing to watch someone, and like she very much appreciated the good parts of the prequels, and she kind of ignored the bad. She really liked the Padme Anakin relationship, and she really liked the kind of bromance / like father son relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin. So then when it got to that point, where because she knew who Darth Vader was, but she didn't know it was Anakin Skywalker. She just knows that Darth Vader is this big villain. So she'd heard the name Darth Vader, and she was like waiting for him to turn up, and she thought he was this robot, that just turns up eventually and starts fucking shit up. And the bit where he puts the fucking lightsaber on Anakin's shoulders, and he's like, I deem you Darth Vader. Like her face was just like the best thing you've ever seen. She was like, no, like she's screaming, and I was like, dude, that's who these movies were made for. Like this, they are good. It's just because they before them came these masterpieces, it's easy to like pick on them, but they are really, really good. And like honestly, as much as I make fun of them, if I'm reaching, like if I'm going to like, where do I want to set like this fun little Star Wars story I'm making, or where do I want to set this Star Wars D&D campaign I'm making, I'll usually go to Clone Wars stuff because it's the most dense and most world buildy stuff. You know, there's so much cool shit. Like it's so cool.
But not to go completely off topic. 20 hours later.
Yeah, I think we fucked up. Yeah, but it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. We talked about something geeky. Hopefully, people.
Yeah, I just Tumblr got me off track. You know, all these great articles, great think pieces on Tumblr. There's also this great gift set of Rogue One, that had like what's his name? Cassian?
Oh,
Diego
main
guy.
Character.
Yeah.
Oh, I know him as Diego Luna, so like when you know an actor's name, it's hard to like.
So his line about all the horrible things he's done for the rebellion and like why he chooses, it's that with like every single character, and it has one in the middle, one spot that's like I have to hope about what's to come, and it's like Luke, Han, and Leia hugging together.
Oh man!
And it was so great. Rogue One, my favorite Star Wars movie. I'm one of those assholes, but
it's not an asshole to say. It's not an asshole thing to say that. Rogue One is up there for me. I think it might be. It's hard to rank them, honestly. I always say my favorite is The Force Awakens because I do think that is my favorite Star Wars movie.
Force Awakens is great.
But Rogue One hits me in such a specific point. I think I talked about this at length, so I'm not going to go into it, but like Rogue One is the epitome of what the rebellion means to me.
Yeah.
Like, that movie is so, and it brings you to tears, like if you're a Star Wars fan, because when they're all throwing themselves in, and not just the main cast, we know at this point they all die, but just the soldiers, the random soldiers in the background who they scream as they run, and they're just like, we're going to do this, even though it means that we're not going to make it.
This is honestly like a very important aspect for just me and like the type of person I try to be is like it has the most diverse cast of any Star Wars movie.
Yeah, totally.
And for me that's really important, and the way that those characters are used and how Diego Luna's character is like this very interesting like Han Solo type archetype where he's like, kind of a rogue scoundrel, but in like a really, really shitty way. Like he's a really bad dude, but in like a super interesting way. And like, it's so good. We're going to get off the Star Wars train because we're just going to keep talking about this forever.
Yeah, I think we'll get off the Star Wars train for a week, and then next week I'm going to talk about Star Wars nonstop because fucking Solo's going to be out. But
Jesus, Solo comes out. Yeah.
Yes, dude. Yes.
Donald Glover, baby.
Donald Glover. I'm so excited. There's a woman in it from a TV show I love called Fleabag, and she's playing a robot. And I don't know how much of a performance can come through, but like looking at Alan Tudyk.
Tudyk. Yeah.
His performance is so good in Rogue One, so I'm hoping that they'll give her the freedom that he got to kind of like make the robot her own.
Isn't that your favorite thing when someone from like a TV show gets into a movie, because you feel like it's like, oh my gosh, there's like one of my kids is growing up.
I like it when it's someone who really does love stuff, like he seems like a fan, like Gareth Edwards as well, the director of Rogue One. There's this awesome like featurette on the Blu-ray of Rogue One, where he shows pictures of him as a teenager going to where they filmed all the Star Wars movies, because like as a teenager he was such a big fan that he would go to the like places where they shot it, and just seeing someone like that finally get to work on a Star Wars movie is just so cool. It's just it feels like it's in the right hands, Okay, so I wanted to talk about that. I went to Comic-Con. I haven't really got much stories from that. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. But spent a lot of money. But I kind of covered everything.
You got your Mandalorian armor. I saw that.
Oh,
you got your picture.
Cool. It was literally the exact same guy. I saw him and I was like, dude, he's back. Yeah, I love con. The cosplayers are so cool. It drains your money, but like it's just a fun environment. It's so fun walking around it. You can literally strike up a conversation with anyone, and it'll always be, you'll have something in common, which is so cool. I enjoyed it, but what I wanted to talk about is something weird. I've been streaming lately on the Arcade Crowd's Twitch and YouTube, and it's an interesting experience because I've never streamed before. I'm the type of person that likes editing and likes knowing that what I'm doing is going to be able to change. Like if you ever watch my vlogs, I'm like cutting around a lot. I'm jumping around because I like to kind of talk until I can't talk anymore and then go, think. What am I going to say next? What am I going to look like? So streaming is a weird thing because I'm just going and I'm like, I can't, I can't back out. Like I'm just talking and talking and there's no stopping and I could just delete the stream after it's done. But like if people are watching, they're going to see it.
Yeah, I was going to say the people who are there for it live.
Yeah, and it's an interesting experience, honestly. I've done it 3 times so far, and each time's been quite different like mood, different like kind of
and different types of games too. Not to piggyback on you, because I think I watched all 3.
I think so.
No, I was.
Were you there for when I was playing Disney Infinity?
No, okay, so I missed that one.
Okay,
so I was there for Oddball and Star Wars Battle. King of Oddball.
It was interesting. Definitely a learning experience. There were some things that I was like, okay, I know this doesn't work now. Like I was playing Star Wars Battlefront, which is a very like, you play in the game, and I wasn't able to concentrate on the chat. So then I tried to concentrate on the chat, and then I wasn't playing the game, and I was like, and I was getting all confused and stressed about that. And then there have been different things that I've learned along the way, but like it's interesting. When I was doing King Oddball, it probably felt the best because it was such a low maintenance game. I kind of treated it as like a one-person podcast that had audience interaction, and it was interesting. It was cool, and I'm kind of getting into it. And I don't know where it's going to go, but it's never something I really thought I would do because I'm so in love with editing. But I don't know. I'm thinking of maybe trying some stuff out. I don't know. I was going to ask as well, and maybe the podcast is not the right place to do it. But do you have a PlayStation Plus account?
Yeah, so I do.
You do have a PlayStation? Because I was thinking, we've been doing some crazy stuff with Wi-Fi friends. It's not completely crazy that we could just stream sometimes. Because I think we have the technology. Like, do you have a microphone that would plug into your PlayStation controller?
So that'd be the one thing I'd have to figure out. But I've also been looking at like getting some sort of microphone.
Yeah.
Just trying to, update the softwares a little bit. Over here at Johnstick Productions. Our production agency's a little bit small. We're a small crew, but we get the job done.
Do you speak into like a headphone mic right now, or is it just into your phone?
So yeah, right now I'm talking to you like I'm talking on a normal phone call.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, yeah, it's just interesting. It's something that I've kind of been thinking about, and I was like, thinking about how you stream on the PlayStation. I was like, well, when you stream, you can broadcast your voice by using a mic, but you can also broadcast calls. So, like, if I called you on the PlayStation and we talked over the PlayStation software. But
do you really want the audience to see me destroy you in games?
Oh,
I don't think that's fun for anybody.
This again.
I don't think, because there was no footage of it when we were in Wales, but I crushed you.
John came to my house, and he beat me at... Now, I'm not a competitive person when it comes to most games, but games where you are judged on your comedic skill, this is where I get competitive, because I don't consider myself a very good gamer, but I do consider myself a funny person, and when you destroyed me in that game, it hurt my ego a lot, and I was like, I'm not going to recover.
See, the great thing is like, I think it was less about me being funny, and I'm just really good at knowing how to read a room.
Yeah, that's
I think the thing was I'm like, all right, cool. What comment is gonna make these 3 specific people laugh?
But that's
not what might not necessarily be like a funny joke, but it's like, oh, here's an in reference that they will all laugh at.
But I think reading the room is kind of mastering comedy. Like you can say that you're funny, but if people aren't laughing, then you got to know the audience. And I didn't play the audience. I was doing what I thought was the funniest personally, and it was an embarrassing.
It's not like you were destroyed. You got second place.
I did get second place, but in comedy there is first place and there is loser.
I don't think that's how that works.
No, I was just a bit salty.
But speaking of stretching out, that's a weird way to say that sentence. No, but I've also been playing around, toying with doing some different things, Wi-Fi friends wise, such. And part of me is like, oh man, there are a lot of cool locales here. What if I shoot like a short movie?
Ooh.
All with the phone and stuff. So I've been thinking about that. Not sure we'll see how that goes. It's just hard with my work schedule.
Yeah, totally.
So like when I'm able to do something, it's like, all right, let me just throw something together real quick and like get it done.
Yeah, I mean it's always hard the time commitment. Like there are a lot of things that I shoot and then they stay like in limbo for a while, and then until I can finally come back and edit them. So there is, it is kind of awkward sometimes because you want that energy still going into the edit. You want to shoot it, still be excited about it, and then go straight into the edit, where sometimes that doesn't always work out. Sometimes you can, I can only shoot this one shot on this certain day, but then that doesn't line up, and it can be messy. But I think the key is keeping your excitement going. Like when I would do films, a lot of the times I would write a script and I'd be excited and I would finish the script, and then by the end of finishing the script I wouldn't be excited anymore, and then it would never go anywhere further. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it kind of rides on how engrossed in the idea you are, I guess.
Yeah, because I've got like a full, like not movie, but like for writing stuff, like I got a full story, a new story idea, all like completed basically. Like I already know beginning, middle, and end.
Yes.
Which is usually hard for me because usually how I write is I get scenes.
Yes.
And then I build up or build down from those scenes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that has to do with like acting and theater and stuff. And I'm like, oh man, this is a great exchange between two characters. All right, cool. How do I get to that? Or how do I get away from that? Or where do I go from that? Well, this one, literally during a boring shift at work, the entire crazy, ridiculous idea came to me.
Like from start to finish.
Yeah. Which is really weird. Usually doesn't happen.
It is rare. Like sometimes I get beginnings a lot. Like I love how we're just talking about writing now. I get beginnings come to my brain a lot. And I sometimes, like you said, I'll get scenes, but most of the time I'll get like this really good idea of how to start something. And I'd be like, wow, this would be a great like way to pull the audience in and really get them interested, and then get me interested as well in the characters based on like how I see them for the first time, because that's like one of the most important things of like how you introduce a character, how you introduce a world. I'll never get endings. I'll never think of endings. It'll have to be the only time I've ever gotten endings, and all the things I have made that have endings, it's always been something I've worked at. It's always been something that I've really thought about, and how could I put this to bed? What would be the optimal way to finish this story? And like, it's so tough for me, but for some reason I've got like a million ideas for beginnings, and it's just it's so weird how everyone's brains work differently. Because I know like John Hughes was a writer who would just write films in a couple days. He would just non-stop, start to finish, do it chronologically. He wouldn't go write a bit there, and then tie them together. He would just go, page one, scene one, and then he would write all the way till the end, and he'd be like, done.
Which is
let's
just
make it.
Crazy to me. Like,
it's insane. But then he makes films like The Breakfast Club, and you just go, how? Like, it doesn't make any sense how you would do stuff like that.
Speaking of things that don't make any sense, do you have a current?
God, these segues.
That was a good segue, right? That was a great segue.
These segues are getting more and more tortured.
Again, I'm just saying, a dancing musical segue that goes across the screen.
If people think that this is tortured, wait until you get to John's special segment where he outros the podcast in whatever random crazy way he thinks of this week.
So it's funny, on one of the beach vlogs, there's music behind clips, obviously. Yes. I was like, oh man, what if I make up a bullshit song and I sing it? And I was like, no, that'll annoy people and they will not want to I was like, oh, part of me wanted to sing like "We're going to the beach, yeah, going." But I was like, oh, I feel like that would kind of just wear out its welcome quickly.
Jeez. Yeah, and the music you chose didn't do that at all.
Oh, I didn't know at the time.
No, yeah, I get it, dude. I think I'm glad it happened because of the second video. I feel like it's worth it.
You got to rebound.
I've got a current fave.
And speaking of rebound,
oh my god, just keep segmenting. Never finish it. Just keep segmenting. Speaking of favorites, I have a current favorite this week. Last week was a bit weird for me. I didn't really have something I was super into, but in the time that we finished last week's podcast and we started today's podcast, I started and finished the entire season 1 of Atlanta. Wow. This show is one of those weird shows where I watched the first episode really, really excited. Like when when you're really excited to watch a show and you're like, oh man, I'm going to get into this show immediately. And you watch the first episode and you go, oh, that didn't really grab me. And like, I was like, I was so bummed that I was so sure I was going to like this show. Watched the first episode. It was good, but it wasn't like, wow, for me at least. So I kind of stopped, and then a couple of days later I was like, no, I'm going to try it again. So I watched the second episode, and I was like, okay, that was a bit better. And then I watched the third episode, and I don't know exactly what episode it was, number-wise, but I can tell you what the episode was, like, plot-wise. So there's an episode pretty early on, maybe it's even halfway through, because it's only 10 episodes long. It's a long show. And it's also 20-minute episodes, so it's like, it just flies by. It just completely like zooms by if you binge watch it. There's an episode towards the middle of the series, maybe even closer to the start than the middle. But the idea is that you're not watching an episode of Atlanta anymore. You're watching an episode of a TV show that is set in the world of Atlanta, if that makes sense. So you're watching a TV show you're watching a network called BAN, which is the Black American Network, and you're watching a TV show that's on this fictional network called what is it? Montague. It's called Montague, and it's basically a talk show. It's a highbrow talk show hosted by this very highbrow, very like hello and welcome to this episode of Montague. Like he's one of those, like he's a gentleman, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And he has a panel of 2 guests, and they're going to debate like interesting, like controversial topics. And one of the guests is like a professor, and she is like, she's a very liberal professor, and she's talking about like, she studies like transgender issues and gay rights issues and stuff. And the other panel guest is a character from the TV show that you've gotten to know. So the only connection between the plot of the TV show that you've been watching up until this episode and this new crazy fictional TV show is that one of the characters from the show is on this panel.
Is on the panel.
That is the only thing. You don't need to know anything about the show before. Like, I could show you this episode. You wouldn't need to watch the rest of Atlanta. It wouldn't spoil anything that has already happened, and you wouldn't need context. It just works. Because what happens is you watch this TV show, but there are commercial breaks, and all the commercials in the commercial breaks are made up. They're all fictional, like, commercials that are made by Donald Glover and his writing partner, who's his brother. And it is one of the funniest, most interesting episodes of TV show I've ever watched. It is so weird and such a diversion from the TV show up until this point. And, like, it is absolutely insane, but you come out of it being like, that is just a piece of art. Like, it deals with issues that are really serious, but does it in such a bizarre, funny way that you never know whether to go, that was interesting, or just laugh. Like, it's all over the place. I for those who've seen it, know exactly what I'm talking about. But, like, I don't want to spoil it, but I'll give some little tidbits. So, they're talking about... they basically mentioned at the beginning of the show that the rapper, who's the character from the TV show that is on the panel, Paperboy. I should have asked. Have you seen this? Have you seen Atlanta?
I've seen the first episode or first 2 episodes. I think.
Cool. Okay, so you know who Paperboy is
when it first came out, where they released those 2 episodes for free.
Oh, really? Okay, fair enough. So Paperboy is on the panel with this very impressive and intelligent professor, And they start the show by being like, Paperboy, you recently tweeted this controversial tweet about Caitlyn Jenner. And they start talking about it, and you're like, oh god, he's gone, because he's kind of got a reputation for saying terrible things, doing terrible things at this point in the show. So you go, oh, this is going to not go his way. And then the show continues this conversation throughout, and it gets more and more bizarre, and it gets insane, and when the episode ends, you're just like, what the like, you don't expect to go in the direction you go. And I don't want to spoil anymore, but I just want to mention that, like, this show really impressed me, not just because of how good the show is by itself, like, outside of this fun little bottle episode, it is a really, really good show, and it deals with people in the lower class and how they go day by day, like, really, really interestingly. It gives me a little bit of anxiety watching, because I'm, like, empathizing so much with the characters that when they've got, like, you know, no money in their bank account and stuff, I'm just like, oh, fuck, like, that would be so stressful, you know, to be in the situation where you're homeless like that. But just specifically this episode is such an impressive example of how you can do weird and wacky things and not alienate your entire audience. They do it in a way that is so out there and so off the wall, but still in keeping with the themes of the show and kind of what the show is about and what the show is trying to tell you, but just in a completely different way. And it's something that I haven't seen done since TV shows like Community, which ironically Donald Glover was on, so maybe he got some inspiration from there. Well, like Community,
he used to call in interviews, he'd call like Atlanta the Twin Peaks for rappers.
It totally makes sense. It 100%. Like, there are episodes like I was saying about Community. Like, if you've ever watched Community, it's got these episodes that are just weird and not in keeping with the rest of the show. Like, there are episodes where it's all a documentary or something like that. This is very much like that. It feels like a spiritual successor to that, and I can kind of see the Twin Peaks kind of thing going along as well. Highly recommend it for anyone who is a Donald Glover fan. I watched it because I've always kind of been a fan of Donald Glover. But then after This Is America dropped, I kind of reignited my flame of like, oh my god, this guy's amazing. And I found out that the guy who directed the music video for This Is America directed the majority of episodes of Atlanta as well.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, so I was like, oh my god, if it's those two working together again on a whole TV show. So I watched it, and very, very exciting show, very, very emotional as well. And it gets like a 2 Cameron thumbs up for me. Very, very, very good.
That's the highest rating we have here on the Wi-Fi Friends. 2 John thumbs up is not as high a rating as 2 Cameron.
So, John, what have your current favorite thing been this week?
And this is where where the Cameron thumbs ups and John thumbs ups, we see the difference of the two. There's a little TV show I think I've mentioned once or twice here on this here channel. It's called The Vampire Diaries.
I'm slowly starting to assume this is like your favorite show of all time.
Dude, it's so we finally got to the point where it's all new stuff for us.
Oh, okay.
Because we had stopped watching. Yeah, so we had stopped watching. Like, the show's over now, but they did just announce that they ordered a spinoff. For the CW's ordered a new show that's going to come. That's
so it's like in the same universe.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting.
Okay.
To some people, I don't know. But so yeah, we're at like season 6. I think we're near the end of season 6, so it's finally new stuff, stuff that we've never seen before. And this show, some of the character arcs and some of the stuff are very CW.
Yes.
Very CW. There are certain characters that I despise. We'll get into in some of our topics, actually. But then there are also, like, the main cast, some of the best long-term character development that I've seen just in a while. Really impressive stuff. Bonnie, who's one of the main protagonists, she's a witch, whatever. She's gone through like such a development through the show, and she's like the witch. She's the one with magic. So her character a lot of time has been used for Deus Ex Machinas and stuff like that, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But she's finally she's at this point now. She's like so angry and upset with always being used as a plot device.
Yeah.
She's like, my life is literally in the balance all the time, because you guys and all your crazy stuff. It's really cool and interesting. And I feel like the show, my favorite thing about the show is that it has a very, very defined rules for how the universe works, and it plays within those rules. How the magic works, how magic is used, I think is really interesting. Because it's connected very much with like nature.
I think that's something I very much crave, like a consistent set of rules. Like I've been watching a lot of TV shows recently that don't have that really do, like, especially long-term TV shows. They establish rules and then they come up with arbitrary excuses why they can break them, and it's really frustrating because it takes you out. You go, oh, well, you wouldn't have done that if this was, a real situation. You wouldn't have been able to, like, get around those weird arbitrary rules. So I appreciate when, like, rules are established and they're kept to throughout, like, what is it, like 6 seasons? You're into it?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. It's like 6 seasons, yeah. And one of the main things about magic, like in this show, is that there's always a loophole.
Okay.
But that's built into the rules.
I see.
It's like, when there are situations that it's like, okay, cool, but because of nature and because of balance, there has to be a way out of this.
Okay, I see what you're
saying. But then one of my favorite things is that when the show does make like a major decision,
okay,
that's not like an easy thing to get out of. They actually sit with it for a while.
Okay, yeah.
And they eventually find a way out of it, of course, but it's not like the next episode a lot of times. Like there's this, I'm assuming nobody cares about the old CW series of Vampire Diaries that ended like 2 or 3, 4 years ago. So in this book, I'm going to spoil a little bit. So Elena, who's our main character, she was in love with this guy Damon, he's just Dreamboat City, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. He's like the Byronic hero.
Okay.
Kind of like dark and mysterious, and like my favorite thing is that they get into this yelling argument all the time, where he always ends the argument with, "I'm selfish. I'm a bad person." And it's like, Damon, you are, but you're so damn dreamy, Either way. Damon dies.
Oh, no.
It's okay. He doesn't say that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but during the time period, Elena, she can't handle it. Because throughout this show, she has had a lot of dead family members. Like, literally, her life has been riddled with death. It's kind of really sad. And because she's a vampire, all of her emotions are heightened, which I think is a really interesting, an easy answer for the romance and the love plots and all that stuff. Because it's like, well, I mean, you're a vampire, so everything's heightened. Your senses are heightened and whatever. And so, people falling in love, very quickly. I guess there's a plot reason for it,
I get what you're saying. It's kind of like everything... it's all just sped up. I guess physically with the healing, but also emotionally with the feelings and everything.
But then that means for grief, you feel it 100 times more.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so there's this. So basically, through a contrivance, whatever. They play with the kind of old Dracula version thing of vampires can hypnotize people.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I like that.
And it's called compulsion, which is probably one of my favorite things in the show is that they do all that stuff and whatever. But and so she finds a way for it's hey, can you do it on me so that I forget all of my memories of him?
Oh my God! Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind.
Exactly. She gets eternal sunshine, but then he comes back, and it's this great thing of
no.
She there's no way to undo it. Because the person who does it to her becomes a human, and so there's no undoing it, basically.
Oh, fuck.
And so they deal with that for a full season and a half. I think we just now, they fixed the problem. And I think it started mid-season 5, maybe? Or maybe beginning of season 6, I'm not sure. But they dealt with it for a while. But yeah, I think the show's really interesting, and it does a lot of cool, fun, interesting things, and it's not afraid to get really fucked up.
I appreciate that with a show because a lot of times I mean, especially, like, we don't have to even leave the CW to get shows that kind of do that badly, like, in the sense that, you know, they'll be like, oh, wow, look at this crazy, weird, mad thing, and then all of a sudden it's fixed a couple episodes later.
Yeah, Arrow.
Arrow is a big example of that.
Supergirl, I think, does some of that, too.
It kind of is weird. The shows have... they go kind of in and out of falling into it. I think... are you planning to catch up on Arrow? Are you planning to watch any? Okay, do you mind if I spoil it?
Yeah, you can spoil it.
So for those of you who care about Arrow spoilers, I'm about to spoil the season finale that came out just yesterday, I think.
What season is this now?
This is season 6, end of season 6.
Holy shit.
Yes. So the end of season 6, we see Olive Queen going to jail, which, for those who watch Flash, are probably like, yeah, whatever, that's cool. That's probably not going to last forever. But the thing that impressed me about it was that he stands up while he's getting taken away. He stands up in front of like a bunch of cameras and he's like, "Listen, I should have said this a long time ago. I've had people die and run away and lose their entire life to protect this. But I should have just said at the beginning, I'm Oliver Queen and I'm the Green Arrow." And everyone's like, what the fuck? And he's like, I've always been the Green Arrow. I've been the Hood. I was the Arrow, and now I'm the Green Arrow. It was never anyone but me. Like, Roy Harper was not the Green Arrow. He was just standing in for me. And, like, he starts listing all these people who have been accused in the past, and he's like, it's always been me. And then he goes to jail, and, like, as a fan of CW, I can be like, he's not going to be in jail for a whole season. There's no way.
Right. There's no way they can take out.
They like literally, he does it in a way that is almost like the writers writing themselves into a corner that they can't back out of. Like, which I really appreciate, because I was like, Arrow is not the show you'd expect that from. Arrow is the show that does things and then goes, it's fine. Like, even this season, Diggle and Arrow, they have this massive falling out, and they're like, we can't work together anymore. And then a couple episodes later, it's like, well, I guess we got to work together again. And I'm like, what the? You just made a whole big deal about that.
I love Gordon Ramsay, with all my heart. Why is he still on that show?
What?
I feel like he should have left when he had the kid.
Maybe. The problem is that he's so charming. I can't see past that. Yeah. You know, I think that he's such a charming guy and he brings such charm to the role that I can't like judge it based on the role. Maybe he shouldn't be there. Maybe he shouldn't be in the show anymore. Like plot wise, it doesn't make sense.
I mean, but I guess that's probably my problem with the entire cast of Legends. Is none of you guys should probably be doing anything anymore. But you're all just so damn likable that I can't help. Those people. Yeah, I just like. Yeah, the actors, and I'm like, okay, just keep on doing your stuff, guys.
Sarah comes back to Arrow for like a second, and I just would be like, dude, man, I miss Sarah. Like, such a good actress, like such a good, fun actress with such a fun, like her identity now in Legends is so solid and so like I get her now. Not in the earlier seasons of Arrow, she was kind of wishy-washy, didn't really know where she was there. But then now in Legends, she really feels like she should be there, and she's got like an identity. And I'm just like, yes. And then she came into Arrow, and I remembered, and then I was like, am I going to catch up on Legends? Probably not.
Yeah, I saw one clip that was Gorilla Grodd trying to murder a young Barack Obama, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of in love with this, and then I just forgot to keep on watching.
I kind of dropped off at the George Lucas episode because I was like, it's never going to get any better than that from me.
I loved that episode. I loved that season, honestly. But speaking of Sarah Lance,
yes,
first topic of the show.
Ooh, nice
look
transition.
At that. That's a good one. Character deaths that affected you a lot. It happened, and you're just an emotional wreck, whether it was for that 5 minutes or for days afterwards.
I honestly don't think Sarah's death affected anyone. We didn't even know it, did we?
It was one of those, it was like, oh, wow, this is an interesting plot, and then they completely ruined it, but, it's fine.
Maybe she should have stayed dead, but that's a bit spoilery.
Do you have answer that springs to mind?
100%. 1,000,000%. I've got a couple answers. I don't know if I want to go through all of them, because we don't want to be here for hours, but my stock answer, the one that I always give when people go, character death that affected you, character death that really killed you, blank, 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 blank. It's got to be Lieutenant Mace Hughes. Lieutenant Hughes.
Oh man.
Spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched Full Metal or read Full Metal. I mean, I haven't even finished reading Full Metal, but I've read past that, and
You've all had time. You've all had time.
I believe that even if you know it's coming, and even if you tried your best, if you hadn't read Full Metal but you knew that character existed and that he died, and you were like, I'm going to read this and I'm going to try my best to not fall in love with him so that when he dies I don't get upset, you'll still fall in love with him and you'll still cry.
The worst part is how the scene is built. Is just the creeping inevitability in the back of your mind, where like you've already almost kind of resigned to the fact that you know he's going to die, but you just don't want it to happen so badly that you try to talk yourself out of it, and you give yourself false hope.
You do, and all the evidence is stacked towards him dying. The show does not hide it. It is a character that is not important to the overall plot. It is a character who is intentionally one of the most lovable, delightful people on the show. You know, especially when the show is covered in characters who have all done something wrong. He's one character who really hasn't done anything wrong, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he's not really shady, except for maybe, like, not Armstrong. Who's the guy, the really strong guy? The really
Armstrong, the buff guy, yeah.
Is that
Major
Armstrong? I thought Armstrong was the Flame Alchemist. No, that's Mustang.
No, that's Mustang. Yeah.
They're all got like very interesting names. So like Armstrong and him are really the only characters on the show that haven't done something in their past, you know, that they regret or something dark. So there's no reason not to fall in love with Hughes. He's just the nicest person ever, but he also has no plot reason for continuing in the show. Yeah. Like there's no like lingering thing with his character. He's just the nicest guy you've ever met in your life, and you fully buy into it. And then when he gets the message and he needs to get the message across, you're like, let him do it, please let him do it, please let him escape this. And when and the worst part, not that the death itself isn't sad, but much with most of these like really terrible deaths, you're already crying, you're already sad, you're already distraught, and then something happens after the death that brings you over the edge. And for me, it will always be, it's not raining, sir.
My God.
It's just I wasn't even a big Mustang fan until that scene, but that really, really like solidified who he is as a person in my brain. Because for those who don't know, a character dies. His name was Hughes, and he's very close with another character called Mustang. And Mustang is a very hard-ass character. He is never seen to show any emotion except for maybe anger. He is a very straight, like I am the best, you know, I am the most professional person. They go to his funeral, and you just see water streaming down his eyes, and he just goes, I think it's raining today. And his like second in command, Hawkeye, is just like, I don't think it's raining today, sir. And he's like, no, it's definitely raining. And he's just like crying, and he's just like, oh my God, it's just, it kills you every time. I've read it 3 times.
A couple of things about the funeral scenes.
Okay.
And I am like legitimately tearing up a little bit, I think, just going back and thinking about this. One, it's how that scene plays out, because at first, like, he's kind of like covering his face. Yeah. And he puts his hat on.
Yeah.
And he looks up, and then you see, like, from underneath the hat, the tears streaming down his face. And then there's the part where because the main thing about Hughes is that he has a wife and a kid.
Yes.
That's all he talks about. That is his thing.
He's obsessed with his family.
You just see them bawling at his grave at the funeral. That's horrible. But then the worst part, and it's so great, I mean, storytelling-wise, because you don't realize it until later. But, oh, God, you haven't finished it, have you?
Oh, wait, well, I'll tell you where I am, and then you can tell me.
So, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if this is a spoiler. So,
yeah.
Basically, somebody's at the funeral.
Okay.
And it turns out that like a bad person was at the funeral.
No, yeah, no, okay. So, okay, spoilers for everyone else. I don't care about anyone else. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm safe.
You're good. Okay, so the Fuhrer.
The Fuhrer, it turns out to be at the funeral, which, yes, rereading it, knowing that who he becomes and
knowing that he is in, like the reason why he's crying at the funeral is because he's so disgusted at the fact that you human monkeys are.
Jesus.
It's one of the things that just because Zafir has like always been like in the beginning he just seems like this super nice, great guy, and you're really like, oh, he's just so nice, right? And then he's like, oh, he's pretty cool. Then you find out he's like Satan.
He's not even Satan. He's like Satan's lackey. Like he's the worst.
He's Starscream.
He's Starscream. Oh my god, that's a great analogy. Yeah. I mean, for me, it will always be Hughes that will. It will always be Mustang that'll kill me in that scene because, like, even the symbolism with the hat, because he pulls the hat over his face to stop him showing from crying, but it's his military cap, which again is reinforcing the idea of these two were brothers in arms, like these two fought in the war together. And then later in the book, where it starts flashing back to the war, and Hughes turns back up, you realize how much of a bond he had with everyone in the war, and you're just like, oh my god, dude,
I saw this thing on Tumblr, because I'm on Tumblr all the time now.
Yes.
Which was his daughter grown up, and her having a picture of him.
Oh, no.
And being like, he's the reason I joined. And her in, like, his uniform. As an adult, like, joining the military. And talking about how great her dad was and how much she loved her dad.
Oh, rest in peace, me.
And I'm like, that's amazing. That is a headcanon I can get behind.
100%. 1,000%, dude. So I've got a couple more. Maybe we'll go back and forth. What is the one that stands out to you?
So mine's actually a recent one.
Ooh.
From Vampire Diaries.
Oh.
Not to talk about the show all the time, but so Caroline Forbes, who's been in the show Sheriff Forbes, who's been in the show since the first episode.
Okay.
She's the mother of one of the main characters.
I see.
And then she, like, this. I guess it's the beginning of the season. Whatever, she finds out she has cancer.
Oh, shit. Not bit by a vampire or anything.
No, nothing cool or interesting or fun. Cancer, which, not to get too personal, but last year, see, my emotions are all over the place. Because last year, my dad passed away from cancer. Yeah. And it was so weird to see that, like, story play out on TV.
Yeah.
Because it was a thing that came out of nowhere that no one was really expecting. And then some of the stuff, just how they handled it, because I think they handled it in a way that's a very interesting way to tell the story.
Yeah.
But it's also just so emotionally taxing.
I get what you're saying, yeah.
Because, so they go through all the steps of like, all right, cool. How are we let's use vampire blood. Because in the show, like, vampire blood can heal people, has healing properties.
I see.
Doesn't heal cancer.
Oh, man.
Which we find out. It like expedites it.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And so that was harsh. But then, like, the worst part about it was, so she's off having this moment with, her daughter is off, like, trying to prepare things. And so she's, like, talking with this, one of the main male characters, whatever.
Okay.
And they've been, like, hinting at a relationship for them since literally, like, the second season or the first season. But they've never pulled the trigger now. And then they start to kind of pull the trigger, and then, like, you cut away and you find out that her mom's dead.
Oh, no.
And the worst...
comes out of nowhere.
Well, yeah, there are two other characters that were already with her mom. And so it was like this weird, like, bouncing back and forth. And then so you get to this point where she, like, rushes and they're like, look, your mom's in a coma. She's, like, not gonna make it. And she's like, great. Like, I don't even get to, like, know what my mom's I didn't get to have a last moment with her. And then they do this really beautiful thing where, like, vampires can, like, have this ability to, like, get inside people's heads, like the hypnosis stuff.
Okay.
So she gets inside her mom's head and creates this dream of them, like, this memory of them learning to ride a bike for the first time.
Okay.
And the mom, like, lets her go, and, like, she's, biking away, and it's, like, this really beautiful moment.
Oh, man.
And it's heartbreaking. They do some more stuff with, like, another just real quick because I have to because it's part of the whole story.
Yeah, 100%.
So vampires have this ability to flip the switch and turn off their emotions.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
So they
like
flip a
this.
switch in their brain, just completely cut all their emotion out of their life. So they feel no remorse, no guilt, no anything.
Like fuck the Vulcans. I couldn't remember the name
Yeah,
of them. Like
yeah, like
Vulcans.
Vulcans.
Yeah.
So she, after the funeral, does this, goes on a bender, goes on a killing spree, whatever.
Oh Jesus.
Um,
Okay.
and then so they're like, all right, we need to break through. We need to find something that's powerful enough to like emotionally break through, her mental block
Bring it
and
back.
bring her back. So they're like, all right, here's the last letter that your mom had written this letter, and she mailed it so that it would come back after she died.
Hmm.
And then she burns the letter because she
Oh
doesn't care.
no.
And then when she finally does flip it back, it's like this horrible, heartbreaking situation of like, hey, guess what? Sometimes you don't get closure.
Oh fuck,
And
dude.
sometimes you'll never know what the last thing someone wanted to say to you was. And it's like, it's so heartbreaking and so like a real life thing, but in
Yeah.
guise of all this supernatural stuff. And it's just been a season long like torture.
Yeah, I can see because like the tendency is to make these things fantastical and to make these things like crazy and fabricated. But like when situations are crazy and fantastical, but the stories are real and they feel like real, like you said, they try to do the mystical, crazy stuff with the vampire blood. But like when it comes down to it, and it's just like you said about like you don't get closure. It's just like it's so harsh.
Well, and especially with TV shows, a lot of times like people want to have like the perfect death. Everyone's
Yes.
around. They get to say all the things they never wanted to say,
Yeah.
and then they peacefully pass away. And sometimes it's like, no, you're out at the store, and like they're just gone before you get back.
Yeah.
And so
100%.
it was a hard story choice. I think it's not the easy choice
No.
of like, oh, well, let's just give everyone the closure they need. It's like, all right, well, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I think, a bold storytelling choice, but a necessary one a lot of times, because it's honestly like sometimes the times you most resonate with something. It isn't when the people are turning into bats and flying around. I don't know if they actually do that.
No, they don't.
But like it's the real moments like this. Even in a show about vampires, that's not what the pull of the episodes usually is. It's the characters, and you've really really nicely segued me into my second one, which will be my final one, because I think it really works with that one you just said, which is for anyone who's seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm not sure if you're a fan of this, John. Are you a big Buffy fan?
I'm a big Angel fan.
Okay,
Not the biggest Buffy fan.
I was super into Buffy the Vampire Slayer for like a year. It takes a while to get through that series unless you're like watching it day and night. Like I was watching like an episode a day, really, kind of, as much as I could. Really, really good series. Would recommend it to everyone. But it takes a tonal shift a couple times throughout the show, and it literally is just like the older the characters get, the darker the show gets, because it allows it, because it's kind of how life goes as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to spoil Buffy the Vampire Slayer a little bit. It's not.
It's okay. I spoiled the shit out of Vampire Diaries.
But like, this is something that you will still, I think, be affected by, even if you know it's coming. Much like the Hughes death. There is a scene. There is not a scene. There is an episode in later seasons called "The Body," and Joss Whedon in the later seasons wouldn't really have as much involvement with the show. He was still kind of like heading the story of where it was going, but he wouldn't come and like write episodes by himself. He wouldn't write the whole scripts by himself. He wouldn't direct episodes. But there is an episode called "The Body," and it is written and directed by Joss Whedon, and it's got no vampires or anything in it. It begins with Buffy coming home from vampire slaying. It's just a scene where she's just like any other episode, where she walks in the door and she's like, "I'm back, sorry I was out late." And by this point her mum knows she's a vampire slayer, so it's not like, one of those things where she has to sneak in. So she walks into the house and she's like, "I'm back." And she looks over at her mum, and her mum is lying on the sofa, and she's like, "Hi mum, I'm back." But her mum doesn't respond, and she's like, "Oh, my mum's asleep." And she walks over to her mum, and I'm not going to go step by step throughout the episode. She realizes that her mum is dead. There is no context. There's no build-up. There's no, like, earlier episode where her mum is sick and is suffering with something or coughing. Her mum is just, all of a sudden in this episode, just dead and lying on the sofa. And what precedes is an hour of Buffy losing her mind. Like, she goes through, I don't want to say the stages of grief, because it's not like that clinical and logical. She literally just, she breaks down. Like, there's moments where she's talking to her mum, like her mum is fine, but her mum is dead and just not responding. There's moments where she's trying to bring her mum back, like she's pounding on her chest and stuff. There's obviously this moment where her little sister comes in, and then she has to deal with that, but she doesn't deal with it well. The paramedics come in, and it's called The Body because it's all about Buffy's relationship with this thing that was her mother, that just is nothing like her mother now. It's just this husk. And, like, I don't know if it's a prosthetic or if it's the actress lying there, but it really is the first time I've ever watched a show and been like, wow, that must be what a dead body looks like. Like, it is so convincing. And it isn't sad because Buffy's mother dies. Because I like Buffy's mother. She's a cool character, but she was never one of those characters where you're like, wow, I'm so invested, you know? It is just the way the episode plays out in such a serious manner. For a show that is about vampire slaying and about cute boys that want to, you know, date Buffy. Yeah. Like, it is so dark and like, honest and raw. And she dies, ultimately, you find out, from a brain aneurysm, which is not something that has any precursor. It's not something, you like, it's always come in, like, there's no, like, evil villain you can fight. It's just random. She lied down on the sofa and then she had a brain aneurysm and died. And it is the darkest, scariest shit I've watched in my life. It's just this girl just losing her mind because the person she cares about most in life is dead. And there's nothing she could do about it. And Buffy's such a strong character. She's such a strong person. At this point in the show, I think she's already actually come back from death herself. So, like, it's so weird. And the actress does such a good job of just making it honest, and she doesn't overplay it. Like, the scenes where she's talking to her mum, it's not cheesy. You believe it. You believe that in her mind, she's convinced herself that her mum is still okay. And it's heartbreaking, not because of her mum, but because of her. And that episode is just it's one of the best pieces of media I've ever seen. I never even finished Buffy because it got to the point where I watched so much of it that it was oversaturated. But that episode will stay with me for my entire life. Like, it is so, so dark. And I recommend people watching it, even if they haven't seen the show. Like, just go watch, just type in The Body and see if you can find it somewhere. It's just a really, really good episode. But yeah, that's kind of, I felt like that led off your point. Do you have another character death that you'd like to bring up?
I don't think I do, actually.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty we could probably go through in future episodes. We can even do a sequel to this where we do a bit more research. But I'd be interested to know other character deaths that affected people. If they put them in the comments and let us know, we might. Although, be careful, because don't do anything from recent media.
I was going to say, I was affected by anything that might have happened in Infinity War. You can go watch our video about it.
Yeah.
If you want to hear about those thoughts.
Yeah.
Quick one. Yondu from Guardians.
Oh, man. Oh,
which
God.
I mean, that was a couple of years ago. I don't know. Hopefully that didn't spoiler for anybody. Hopefully everyone knows.
I mean, if you've seen Infinity War, you know that happens.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a little rough. Especially just because, like, the comparisons between him and Rocket that they do in that movie, and then also just the Michael Rooker, man.
Michael Rooker's great, and everyone kind of pulls it. The guy that really kills it for me in that scene is James Gunn's brother, who plays Yondu's, like, second in command.
Yeah.
When he screams because he sees the you know, there's that line right at the beginning of the movie that you always miss the first time. Well, you always. That's a contradictory sentence. You miss the first time you see the movie, but when you go back and watch it, you pick up on the line. It's when Yondu is like, he sees Sylvester Stallone, who's the leader of the Ravengers, and he's like begging him to let him back in, let his what do you call it, Ravenger faction back into the main Ravengers. And he's like, no, you're outcast. And he's like, please. And he's like, no, the fires of blank, whatever it is, will never burn at your funeral. Like, you'll never see that. And then he walks off, and Yondu's distraught. and then you don't even pick it up. You think it's just a weird sci-fi phrase that he used, but then you realize it's an actual traditional ceremony, and they do, like, even though he said they wouldn't, when he finds out what Yondu did, like, they come and they do it for him, and it's just like, oh man,
That
so
ending
good.
it's this beautifully, like, it's this beautiful moment. I mean, it's visually spectacular, but it's also like a very emotionally gratifying moment of
Totally.
like, just you're getting actual fireworks, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And it was
Metaphorical and
just,
physical
yeah.
fireworks.
And so it's just, it's so good. And then just how his whole relationship with Peter informs his character and everything just is really well done.
It is, and I there are a lot of great moments in that funeral. I mean, there's like Peter's speech, which is like a little bit funny, but like more sentimental. Even the funny lines like mean something. And then there's that bit with Rocket where he's like, "They came, even though he hated everyone and pushed them away and stole batteries." And it's just like, oh man, like you realize that Rocket's finally coming to terms with the fact, and like you feel that in Guardians as well. Like in Guardians, Rocket feels like a more complete, like he feels like a more stable, like secure person than he did in the beginning of Guardians 2, where he's a bit like, you know, throwing everyone away. So such a good death, like a sad death, but like, you know, good in a plot emotional way. Are you okay to move on to my topic? Are you got anything else to say? I was kind of looking at your topic and I was like, I kind of want to stay with this theme and I want to take it the dark negative route.
Oh.
What are some characters that you think should have stayed dead?
Oh gosh.
If you want, I would.
I was just say, I've got one off the top of my brain, off the top of the dome.
You can go for it.
Barry Allen
Oh,
in the comics.
Damn.
Yeah.
I think this is interesting. This is interesting because I can see your logic here. I can definitely see your logic.
So I was one of those kids that grew up with the old Justice League cartoon.
Absolutely, 100%.
Wally West was my Flash. So when around 2009, maybe it was later, Flash Rebirth happens.
I think that's 9. That's 9. That's 2009,
yeah,
2010.
And I'm like, I know who Barry Allen is. I know the historical importance of Barry Allen. But I feel like once he was added into the mix, it completely confused and muddled the waters of the Flash family. Because you had Flash, Barry Allen. You had, not called the Flash, but doesn't really have a nickname at that point in time, Wally West.
He was kind of just called Wally, wasn't he?
Yeah. You had Bart Allen, who is Kid Flash.
Mm-hmm.
You had Jay Garrick. You had Jesse Quick.
Let's not forget about Impulse. Hello?
Wally had 2 kids.
Yes.
Had their own powers. And my thing was, I didn't care about Barry Allen, and I was like, okay, whatever. I didn't care about Hal Jordan, but Jeff Johns was able to make me care. And I just feel like, especially Barry Allen becoming the new Flash, and all the stuff that happened with the 52, and now the weird area we're in Rebirth, I feel like his resurrection just created this whole confusing situation for the Flash family that took away, I feel like, what was important about the Flash to me. Because the Flash, in a weird sense, is about moving on. It's about moving forward. That's what that character is about. And it just felt like backwards, and we were going backwards, and we were taking away all of this work that we had done, because it felt like Bart was going to graduate soon.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, there's definitely a feeling when you read Rebirth that you're like, especially at the end, where you're just like, okay, you know? Like, I like Rebirth. I think Rebirth is a great book, but it suffers, like you said, with this kind of, it doesn't have a good, satisfying, punchy ending, because you're just like, okay, so the ending is that we're back, you know?
Yeah,
like that everyone is the Flash now.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say. I don't know if necessarily I would have kept him dead, because one of my favorite things about the Flash history is this weird, like, he's an icon. Barry becomes almost a god in the Flash universe. He, for years and years and years, Wally had the title, obviously, and he always talks about Barry, and he talks about the lessons Barry taught him, and Barry sacrifices himself in such an interesting, like, almost deity-like way that he becomes a god. He's like, we all know the story about how he stops the Anti-Monitor and he runs so fast that he evaporates, you know, and throughout that time, there were hints that he was still running through the Speed Force. There was that scene where he shows up, like a guy with ginger hair and golden boots shows up at a race that all these speedsters are having, and he beats them all, and they go, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I don't know, remember." And then he flies off again, and he's back into the Speed Force. And he kept showing up everywhere. Then when he came back, I was like, okay, so this is the finish of this arc. But what I think they could have changed one little thing in that story, and they really could have kept the punchiness of his death without having this muddy situation we're in now. But I think that if he came back in Rebirth, just like he did in Rebirth, and the whole Black Flash situation happened, I think if he had then had to take the mantle of Black Flash and run off and become this spooky, scary demon version of Barry Allen, so that he's kind of back but he's not, and then Wally would continue being the Flash, that could have solved the problem, I think. I think that would have been a nice, interesting end. And honestly, that's where I thought they were going when the Black Flash stuff starts happening and you realize that Barry is becoming the Black Flash. But then I can't even remember how they get out of that situation. They kind of just resolve it, don't they? It's
I think because Eobard Thawne comes back and that muddles everything. Well, and then one of the big problems is that there's about 2 trades worth of a new Flash book, and then New 52 happens.
Yeah.
Then they just reset the status quo to Barry's always been the Flash, and there was no Wally, and now there's 2 Wallys.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's one of those things where, like, Road to Flashpoint is like a really good arc. It's a really fun, interesting arc.
Yeah.
And I like Flashpoint itself as well. I think all that the whole year or two of Flash was really, really fun and really good. And I liked some of the stories that came out of the New 52 Flash. I think
Francis Manipul's art was amazing on that book. He was doing some incredibly interesting panel layouts, and
100%. And I think there were some really cool new villains and ideas to come out of that series. That series by Francis Manipul spawned obviously the new Reverse Flash, who is related to Iris West. I think it's Danny West.
And it's the new Wally's, I think, father. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, and then there's also the idea of shoot, what are we going? Oh yeah, Iris getting powers, like Iris getting speed powers. That came from that arc as well. But ultimately, I think that it's always kind of been. It wasn't worth getting rid of all those Wally stories, because those Wally stories, like you said, me and you grew up on Wally West as the Flash. Barry coming in Rebirth, like Barry turning up in Rebirth, was pretty much, I don't know about you, but it was my first experience as Barry as the Flash. It was like, who is this guy? It felt
like going to a family reunion and a family member who you've never seen before. And some of your older family knows him. He's like a distant uncle. But none of the kids know who he is because they've never seen him before.
Yeah.
And so they're like, I guess we have to have an emotional attachment to this guy.
It is. It's like I heard a lot about this guy, but I've never actually, gotten to know him.
Yeah, and I think the thing that hurts, like, that sucks for me the most is, like, Wally's my favorite Flash, but Bart's my favorite. Impulse is one of my favorite characters. And so we lost a lot of Bart development as well.
We did, and it was really, really, really fun for me to relive that development through Teen Titans, the New 52 Teen Titans. I think that Bart is a very, very strong character in that book. But again, it was like we'd already had it. We didn't need to do it again. It was fun to do it again. I enjoyed seeing Bart, be Bart again and be confused and be lost in time. But I was ready for him to kind of become the Flash. I was ready to see a third Flash instead of going back to the first one,
So yeah, that's my first person I thought it was Barry Allen.
That's interesting. I'm going to stay with the comics theme.
Ooh.
I don't know if a lot of people would disagree with mine. I think it's universal, but I feel very, very strongly about it. I don't think Damien should have come back.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, just it made me cough a little bit. So state your argument for the courts, sir.
Damien is a character that I'm pretty sure it's common knowledge that people didn't like him when he turned up, but I didn't like him when he turned up because I was only just getting into Batman comics, and I thought I knew everything. I thought I was like, I've watched the movies. I've seen Batman in the animated series, so I'm gonna get into comics. The first comic I ever bought was Batman and what was it called? I wish I remember it called.
Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul.
No, that was the second comic. The comic before that is
Batman and Son?
Batman and Son. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, we literally started reading Batman at the exact same time.
So Batman and Son was the first comic ever, not just Batman comic, but the first comic I ever picked up by myself, and I was like, I'm going to read this comic because I was a big fan of Batman, and I saw Batman and Robin on the cover, and I was like, this seems like a good place to start. Plus, it was recent. I wanted to read a recent comic. I didn't want to go back in time. I wanted to be up on the norm, and I wanted to be, I'm in. So I started reading Batman and Son. It's a fun comic. It's cool. It's got characters I recognize from the animated series, like Ra's al Ghul and Talia al Ghul. And it's got this kid in it. And I'm suddenly like, I don't know anything about comics because I don't know who this kid is. And then throughout the course of Batman and Son, Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, Batman the Black Hand, Batman R.I.P., Batman and Robin, featuring Dick Grayson as Batman and Damian Wayne as Robin, and then obviously the coming back of Batman into Batman Incorporated. It spanned so long and it got so dug in. It was like a long Netflix TV show worth of stories. And I really grew to love that character and really grew to really appreciate Damian and really think that he was like such a staple of... He really earned the title of Robin by the end. I thought that he started out being like, I'm Robin now. And you're like, yeah, all right, whatever. You're not going to last a year. And it defied the odds. Many, people before have taken up mantles and just disappeared because people didn't like him. But Damian defied the odds and he stuck his sword in the ground. He was like, no, I'm Robin and all of you are going to believe it by the end that I'm Robin. And finally, when I finally was like, no, dude, this guy deserves to be Robin. He's got such a good relationship with Dick Grayson. He's got such a good relationship with Bruce. I love it. In Batman Incorporated, he gets killed in such a thematically perfect way, and it sends Batman into this rage, and it is so good. It is such a good culmination of what Grant Morrison had been working on for those years. I was like, oh my god, this is such a good character death. And then I was like, I'm done. I finished Batman Incorporated. I put it down. I didn't read Batman because I'm like, I'm done. I Green Lanterned it. Where after Jeff Johns left, I was like, I'm done. I put it down. I'm not going to read whoever comes on next. Because it was such a satisfying conclusion, the end of Incorporated. Funny enough, it wasn't actually in the main series Batman. You had to read a separate book which was going on at the same time called Batman Incorporated. But it was such a good end. Grant Morrison did a fantastic job with that character. He created him and he completed him. Much like Johns did with a lot of characters in his Han Solo, in his Hal Jordan run. Then I was browsing the internet and I see that Damian has got his own series, and I go, "Oh, that's interesting. Is it like an Earth 2 thing, or is it like a prequel? Is it before he became Robin? Is it something to do with like him while Batman was dead or whatever?" And they just go, after Robin's recent resurrection. I was like, what the fuck? Why would you do that? Why would you bring him back? I don't understand. I understand understand at this point that Robin's just come back. I understand that Jason Todd came back, and I could have said Jason Todd, but to be honest, they did a lot of cool things with
I was just saying, I think Jason Todd coming back made him a far more interesting character than he ever was.
100%. I think Jason Todd coming back makes sense because he never really got his due. He never really got that story that was him. You know, when you think Jason Todd, you never think, oh, that really cool story when he was Robin. You never really think that. You always go to Red Hood.
However, if not part of the question, but if there's a character that I could kill again, I would do Jason Todd, because he should have died right when he came back as Red Hood, when he tried to mess with the Joker. And
his death, well, quote unquote death in the animated version of that book.
That is my favorite version of that story, and probably one of my favorite Batman stories or movies. Movie.
The Under the Red Hood. Oh, Under the Hood, I think the movie's called, isn't it?
Yeah, Under the Hood.
It's probably up there with one of the best Batman movies. It's up there for me, and it is a fantastic story. If anyone has read the comic Under the Red Hood and didn't like it, watch the movie, because the movie is so much better. And is written by
Jensen Ackles plays Jason Todd, which is super dope. Yeah,
wow.
Dean Winchester.
Oh man. That's an interesting cast, but it kind of works in the movie. I didn't even realize. But yeah, that's kind of my. It's not because I didn't like the character. I loved the character by the end, but I don't know. Why would you? Again, it goes back to that thing of like when you make your bed, you sleep in it, and then it's satisfying. You don't have to
let me make it again.
Yeah. Let's make it again and again and again. Unless it's that old adage of like no one dies except for Uncle Ben. In comics, no one dies except for Uncle Ben, and I really thought Damien was going to be the exception to that. But when Damien came back, I really lost a part of my wonder and imagination in comic books, because when Damien died, it was in such a final way and in such a complete way that I really did be like, I would argue with people and go like, no, people can die in comics. We shouldn't have this. And then he came back and part of me died. I was like, no, I guess nothing's sacred.
Yeah.
It's interesting we both went for comic book characters.
I think comics is one of the few mediums that is able to play with the life and death resurrection, because it's so fantastical.
Yeah, and it really does lend itself to characters coming back more, because I assume Grant Morrison wanted to keep Damien dead, but Grant Morrison ultimately isn't his character anymore. As soon as he puts him in the pages of Batman, the rights for him are lost, and I think that's the issue with comics, is that you will never have... Well, I never say never. I don't think you'll ever get Uncle Ben resurrected, because Uncle Ben dying is such a core part of who Spider-Man is. But anyone who ever writes anything on top of a character like Spider-Man, it's always up for scrutiny. It's always like... And a lot of times I think it should be changed. I think a lot of stories about characters are not in my canon. They don't exist within my canon. I don't. There is some stories like All-Star Batman. Obviously, you could argue that it's in a different Earth.
Yeah.
I don't think that All-Star Batman is in my head canon, but I don't know. It's annoying when sometimes the thing that you really appreciated is all of a sudden retconned and being like, nah, it doesn't matter to us.
It's interesting because usually like, I'm not the biggest, like, let's just murder people. Like, just because I'm, like, a little baby, and I like my stories to just be, like, all nice and stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, it's funny because I was thinking of, there are deaths that it's like, man, that sucked, but it was such a good narrative story.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
That when you bring them back, it's just like, why would you do that? You just ruined, like, everything. Vampire Diaries brings back people from the dead a lot.
Okay.
There are certain people with, like, annoying characters. I'm just like, why'd you bring them back? Matt Donovan is he's so annoying. He's the human, He's just a normal guy. Normal dude, Matt Donovan, who's just was friends with these people and, always gets whacked up in their crazy shenanigans. But he's like, I'm thinking about the people because you guys just think about the vampires,
All right.
but I care about the people here in this town and all the craziness you guys rope them into. And he's literally the most, like, me and Christina today, we were just like watching a little bit before she went to work. We're just like, why is he, one of the characters is like, Matt, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I don't know either. Why is he still here?
Oh, God.
And he's had these chances where it's like, he's almost died.
Yeah.
And it's just, and like, there was this whole thing where like, he had this ring to where like, if he was murdered by anything supernatural, he came back to life.
What?
Yeah. It was a ring that got passed around to some of the human characters for obvious reasons. But it was like, oh my God, can he die without that ring? Or can he just, because he's like, people murdered him and it's like this really cathartic feeling. And then you're like, oh crap, he's coming back. Darn it. Because he has no story relevance.
Yeah. Characters overstaying their welcome is a big issue in a lot of TV shows, especially because they have such a long running time and they want you to keep coming back and watching the faces that you love, so it's hard to kill one of those faces because narratively it might make sense. But I mean, an example of that done well, again, we've criticized the show, but Arrow kills Tommy Merlin in the first season, and it's a very effective death. And I don't know if they've been public with this or this is just something I assumed, but I'm pretty sure they made a rule that day where they killed Tommy Merlin where it's like, we are never going to bring Tommy Merlin back. And he has come back a couple times, but it's never turned out to be him or it's been in the past.
Yeah.
You know? So we've gone to the past and seen, oh, look, it's Tommy from before he died. And there have been episodes like where characters like...
There's the one where like the evil Nazi version of him from another Earth came.
Yeah, 100%. But again, it wasn't Tommy Merlin. It was someone else. I mean, it was Tommy Merlin, but it was a different version of him. There was another episode where a character disguised themselves as Tommy Merlin to like do something, and you're like, oh wow, that's cool. But the emotional impact of Tommy Merlin's death is always stood as like this is it, and this is what happened, because it's such a driving factor for the rest of the seasons. You know, up until that moment in season 1. Oliver is one way, and then after that death he has been another way, and he's been that other way for maybe you could argue too long because he hasn't developed really much since then. but like he it's really, really good and impressive to me that they've kept that character dead, and I think that more shows can learn from that. More shows can learn to be like, hey, if a character is served its purpose and there's nothing more we can do with it, you either need to find a reason that they leave, or you need to find a reason that they die, because sometimes you don't have to kill a character for them to leave. They can have a good reason to leave. You shouldn't kill characters just to kill characters. But sometimes with Tommy Merlin, his death is important to the story, and it's effective. And I think you shouldn't shy away from stuff like that, because that actor was really good and he drew a lot of people into the show. Because I personally was a really big fan of that actor and that character. But again, it doesn't mean that you should keep him around just because of that. You know?
Yeah, I think I hate saying this answer.
Okay.
It really pains me to say it, but Harrison Wells.
Ooh.
He's one of those characters where it's like, with season 2, I was like, okay, I like this. If you're going to bring him back, this is an interesting way to do it. But then they did the HG thing.
HR.
Yeah.
No, wait. Is it? Wait, what initials was it?
HR, or is it HG? HR? I thought it was HG.
I think it's... Oh, because it's like
HR,
a reference
to
H.G. Wells, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
But I don't... Because I kind of assumed that it was a reference to that because of the whole time travel stuff, but also because he's kind of a wacky inventor and stuff.
Yeah, so it might have been... I think it was HR, actually, probably.
Okay.
But they did that, which was different. Overstayed its welcome a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
And then he's still back, and I'm just like, I love that actor. I think he is amazing, and he's one of my favorite things. But I just... It's one of those things where hindsight is like, man, that season 1 was so strong.
Yeah.
And if they had just not brought Tom Cavanaugh back again... But I think also they do have a problem with that, which is the reverse flashes in general.
Oh my god,
because Ebert Thawne died, and he's come back like 4 or 5 separate times. He was a bad guy in Legends.
They keep being like, no, don't worry, guys, Eobanthon is dead. This is just, it's a remnant. It's a past. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you're not doing it especially because he knows that he's gonna die. It's this weird thing where you're like, okay, cool, but like, you know, you don't get that. Like that actor, you know, God bless him. He doesn't get to do much in the first season because he's got a different face on. And Harrison Wells' actor is so good, so strong,
so good.
He's great. He's fantastic. That when the face reveal happens, you know, when Eddie shoots himself and he starts turning back into his original self before dying.
I was upset.
It was crazy. It was awesomely, amazingly mental because you're like, he unmasks. He becomes the Reverse Flash for a split second. You go, oh my god, this is the dude we've heard about all this time. This is the evil Reverse Flash. There he is. You see his face, and then he disappears. And you're like, that's such a good ending for that character because he's so obsessed with like Barry and the history they have, and you never learn about it. And yeah, they had to somehow weave him in because of this, you know, by nature of that story. You know, he had to have fought Barry, but surely getting killed by Eddie means that he never fights Barry. Like, I don't know. It was a weird plot line. I think credit where credit's due. The Eddie death sticks, and that's really cool that they kept the Eddie death. I thought that was really, really interesting that they didn't find a way to bring him back. Much like the Tommy Merlin, I feel like he serves kind of the same purpose in season 1 of Flash. But yeah, Flash is weird. Flash is I like Harrison because of the actor. Again, it goes back to the is it David Paul Ramsey?
Yeah, David.
Yeah. So it kind of goes back to that situation where I like the actor because he's so charismatic and he's so fun to watch, but I'm just not sure if he should still be in the show, really.
Yeah, that's what sucks is when it's like, I like you a lot. This isn't anything about you. This is just, I don't know if the story is just keeping you around because it likes you around.
Yeah, and I don't know if he needs to die. Like, again, I talk about...
Just go back to your Earth, bro.
Yeah, he's kind of, in the episode I watched today, which is not the most recent episode, I've just been catching up because I've been behind. He's like, has this moment with Jesse where he's talking with Jesse and they're kind of like... And I was like, this would be a perfect moment to be like, no, I'm going to come with you, Jesse. You know, I'm going to come with you back to Earth too. But I don't know. I don't know if he's doomed. I like the idea of them always having the different version of Harrison Wells, but it's going to get old. And it kind of, like, there was an episode where it was him and like 6 other versions of Harrison
the
Wells.
Council of Wells.
And I was like, okay, does this mean that we're never going to get any more Wells then? Because if you bring in these people in, then there's no way that they can top this, you know?
Well, and that's the interesting thing is, like, part of me feels like they were doing a Rick and Morty thing.
Yeah.
Because there's, like, this whole idea of, like, the Council of Reed. Well, even Reed Richards has done it, the Council of Reed, where he's got multiple versions of himself. So it's, like, interesting where I'm just like, all right, cool. I feel like we've done almost everything we can do with this character.
Yeah, like every Earth version.
So maybe just leave for a little bit. Not even a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. Flash is an interesting situation because they have this weird rotating fifth.
Yeah.
This guy or girl who is always on the team for one season at a time. Like we had Tom Fletcher.
I'm sad that he left.
He was good, but again, he didn't stick around. We have the ever infuriating to me fucking elastic, elongated man.
Elongated man, you piece of garbage.
I don't know if I hate him because of him. I pretty sure I only hate him because he made fun of Plastic Man and then stole his suit.
I think it's what they did with I think it's just the character. He's one of those characters that I just like. You need to just put you in the trash where you belong.
Yeah, 100%. He makes fun of Plastic Man, who is my favorite hero. And then he steals his goggles. What the fuck? Like,
by the way, did you see that Gail Simone's writing a Plastic Man book?
Oh, please give me more Plastic Man. I hate how much people hate him. I hate how much people not hate him. If they hated him, at least I can argue. They're just ambivalent towards him. I feel like people don't realize how amazing Plastic Man is. I did see that Ben Schwartz, who is one of my favorite comedic actors of all time, Ben Schwartz is absolutely fantastic. If you ever watch Jake and Amir, you probably recognize him as like the milkman and a bunch of other stuff.
Was he on Parks and Rec?
Yes, he plays
John
Ralphio. John Ralphio.
Yeah, okay. He looks like Plastic Man.
He wants to be Plastic Man, and he is fantastic. He is so good. He's just. I mean, if you've ever wanted to get into Ben Schwartz, you're like, I've seen that guy around. Watch John Ralphio's best bits on YouTube. Yeah. It is. I mean, watch Parks and Rec if you have the time. It's a great show. But just his best bits, it's just so good.
I mean, we're getting a Shazam movie, so why not?
Yeah. Also, I mean, I feel like we come to the end of the podcast, but
yeah, I think we. I don't know, because all I've seen is like set photos, and I love Zachary Levi. I think Zachary Levi is great. I'm an unabashed I love Captain Marvel.
You're not allowed to call him that anymore.
Oh, sorry, Shazam.
I know. I love it. It makes no sense. Why is he called the name after the wizard? Why is he called? I get it's confusing. I get that we can't have two heroes called Captain Marvel from competing companies. But, like, I don't know, just call him Marvel. I don't know.
Or just, like, it's weird, because Captain Marvel was acquired through a separate comic book company, because he was created through Fawcett Comics, which were not part of, like, the DC or whatever at that time. And, like, man, I used to read those old, like, library editions of old Captain Marvel and the Marvel family, and just, I unabashedly love Captain Marvel.
I think he's fantastic.
And so I love Zachary Levi. I think he has the charm and ability to make that work. And Mark Strong being Dr. Savannah, I think Mark Strong's great. Mark Strong's always awesome, so...
Remember what we were saying, Mark Strong needs a second chance?
Deserves a second chance.
This is his second chance. This is his Sinestro too.
Yeah.
He's so good at Sinestro.
I think it's an easy story to get right. Just little kid, kind of a punk brat, whatever, gets these magic powers. What? I'm a kid, but I'm a big adult. Oh my God, look at my muscles. It's easy. It writes itself.
I hope it is colorful. That is the only requirement I have. I like a lot of Shazam stories. I like his Jeff Johns story. It's a bit darker. Billy's a bit of a dickhead in it. But it's kind of an interesting take on Dr. Savannah. It's an interesting take on the Seven Deadly Sins. Kind of everything. It's a very interesting take on the family, the Marvel family.
Yeah. Because they're like orphans, right? Like they live in a shelter together.
They all live in this big foster home. They're doing that story for the movie, which is cool. I think it modernizes it. It's cool that they're all foster brothers and sisters. I have a foster brother, so it's kind of hitting home here. But also that series does suffer from being dark at points, like visually dark. Like his armor is a bit more chrome than it is red. I want Captain Marvel I want Billy to be like Shazam, scream Shazam, and then boom, and the brightest red you've ever seen. I don't want any of this season 1 Flash shit where it's like burgundy. I want bright red. I want to be blinded by how colorful this movie is. I want it to look like a comic book, because if any hero deserves it, it is the hero that is a like 12-year-old kid.
Yeah. So I'm actually really, I'm a little, it's weird because The Rock got announced that he was Black Adam like way before.
Yeah.
And then they're like, Black Adam's going to have his own movie. And then like, I don't know what's going on with the movies being made on that side. Obviously I'm not, a Hollywood bigwig or anything. I'm just saying, like, I think that would be awesome. Zachary Levi's great. He's got charm. I think he can make it work as long as they just don't overdo it. Simple story, simple straight through. And I think it'll be fine. I think it will be really fun.
I think it's interesting because The Rock is a producer on Shazam. Presumably because he's a big reason why this section of the franchise is happening. Like he probably pushed to be Black Adam, and then you needed to make a Shazam movie. I like the idea of having a Black Adam movie before having them head to head, because it's like you see them both in their own environments, and then instead of having Black Adam be the villain, it's almost like these two main characters who are very different from each other but come from the same lineage. It's almost like a mini universe within the DC universe,
yeah.
you know, which Captain Marvel kind of always has been. He's always had his own little section of the universe with the Marvel family and Black Adam.
Because it was always hard for him to, whenever they tried to mix them all together, it always just felt like just a little out of place.
Yeah, the only one that's really worked is Superman. Because of the obvious weakness, you know, factor of him being weak to magic.
Well,
so it's just
I think Justice Society works well because of the family aspect.
Yeah.
And because it's like, all right, you're our Superman, basically. But any other time, it just never fully worked.
And I like that, and I really want to see what they do. I want there to be this kind of, a black and white situation where we get Shazam, and Shazam is a super bright, fun, super funny, enjoyable adventure movie where Mark Strong plays a villain, but he's not like super dark. He's like kind of like, you know, a cheesy,
goofy,
campy. Yeah, Dr. Savannah, like, you know, with this scar, and he's like, hey, I hate kids. And then, like, it would be really cool to get that, and then next year or I guess the year after, I don't think this is coming out this year, but the year after Shazam, we get a really dark, serious superhero movie with Black Adam. Exactly the same situation. He gets his powers from the wizard, but we're back in, like, Egypt, and we see him, like, you know, almost like an anti-hero movie, and then all of a sudden, if we get to it, based on the ticket sales, I don't know, but if we get to it, and then a third movie where it's this character that we learned about in Black Adam, but now he's in the modern day, and he comes to, you know, he comes to blows with Billy Batson because they have the same powers, and it's like this really interesting, like, we don't know who to side with because we've had both movies where we've followed each of the characters. The only thing is that Rock is the most charming guy ever. I don't see him being a dick. Like, I know he played a dick for a lot of his career when he was a wrestler, but he's kind of grown out of it now, and I only see him as a lovable goofball.
Yeah. It's interesting because he is very, like, I mean, if you just follow any of his social, he's obviously very strict about his brand.
Yes.
He is very intricate, and every little thing he posts or whatever, you can tell is a very intricately created for, like, this is the image that I want to produce, you know? And so he's always posts these things of like, oh, I'm in the meeting with the writers of this, whatever, we're going over this stuff. Like, he's always very hands-on with all of his projects.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see, like, Black Adam is like, how much he does, like, if this even goes through, because I haven't heard anything about that. Since
other than him being a producer on this Shazam movie, I haven't heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
But I assume it's still happening if Shazam does well.
I'm waiting on Man of Steel 2 still. Guys, I kind of want it. I'm like really, and I want Henry Cavill. Just give me it.
Cavill steals the show in Justice League.
Oh my god, he's so much fun. And the scene with him and Ezra Miller where they're saving people, it's so good. We could do a whole nother podcast on how underrated Henry Cavill is.
One of my biggest John Coming to Wales regrets is that we didn't find time to sit down and watch the Justice League together.
Oh, that would have been...
Me and you, we would have just been looking over each other and like, I forgot about this scene. This is such a good scene. Oh my god. Well, thanks for listening, guys. I've enjoyed the podcast a lot. It's been an interesting one. We talked a lot about TV shows, a lot about comics.
We bounced around a lot.
Sorry?
We bounced around a lot, but I feel like we kept a general...
Kind of.
Yeah.
We kind of kept a general theme of death.
Yeah.
As always, you can follow us on this channel that you're listening to us right now on Wi-Fi Friends. We don't only do podcasts. We also do interesting, fun videos, and like John mentioned earlier in the podcast, they can be anything. Sometimes they're going to be reviews. I'm going to get my final My Hero Academia video up as soon as I see the last 2 episodes. But sometimes they can be a bit more out there, like vlogs, like when I went to Comic-Con and when John went to the beach. Sometimes they're a bit more weird and artsy-fartsy, like when John talked about nature, or when I talked about my favorite place. And John is planning to make a short film, which means I have to outdo him now.
Yeah, so This is a creative outlet, a slice of life. It's a little bit of fun, a little bit of crazy. It's a couple married boys talking about some hot topics. Are you ready for my outro? I've been working on it all.
I'm so ready. I'm fantastically ready.
One, two, 3, 4. Hey there, guys, we're about to leave. But before we do that, here's a couple messages from our sponsors. We've got Coca-Cola is here to stay with a green apple Fanta, yeah. It's not as great as I wanted it to be, but I still quite enjoy it. Other things.
Have you ever heard a song, an actual, genuine, produced, released song that has the lyric,
Oh, God.
I don't think
the great thing
song.
Is, I said I wasn't thinking about this at all.
I think we all finally understand that you are never thinking about the outro song. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. We will check you on the next one.
Flip flop later.